What if the smallest act you repeat every day, refilling a cup of coffee, offering a smile, turns out to be the most important thing you ever do? One waitress learned this when an old woman she served every morning arrived one day not alone, but with 4 bodyguards and a team of lawyers. Pause, this is not just a story about surprise. It's a story about kindness, dignity, and how character is always being watched, especially when you think no one important is looking. Small acts of kindness often feel insignificant, especially in a fast-paced world that celebrates big achievements, loud success, and dramatic moments. We are taught to believe that only grand gestures change lives, that impact must be large, visible, and immediate. But the story of the waitress and the old woman challenges this belief. It reminds us that real influence is often built quietly, through small actions repeated consistently over time. The waitress did not perform a heroic act. She did not donate money, save a life, or make a public sacrifice. What she did was simple. She greeted an old woman kindly every morning, remembered her preferences, refilled her coffee without being asked, and treated her with respect. These actions took only a few minutes each day. On their own, they may have seemed ordinary. But together, repeated day after day, they formed something extraordinary. Consistency is what gave these small acts their power. Kindness shown once can be dismissed as politeness. Kindness shown repeatedly becomes character. Every morning, the waitress made the same choice, to care, and in doing so, she created a sense of safety and dignity for someone who might otherwise have felt invisible. For the old woman, that daily interaction was not just about food or service. It was about being seen, remembered, and valued. Small, consistent kindness builds trust. When someone knows they will be treated well every time, without conditions, a bond begins to form. The old woman learned that this waitress was genuine, not because of one dramatic moment, but because her behavior never changed. She was kind on busy days. She was patient when tired. She was respectful even when no one else was paying attention. This reliability is rare, and it leaves a lasting impression. These small acts also reveal something important about human needs. People do not only hunger for food or comfort, they hunger for recognition. A smile, a remembered name, or a few moments of sincere attention can meet emotional needs that money cannot buy. The waitress unknowingly provided this nourishment every morning. She turned an ordinary diner into a place of warmth, simply through how she treated one person. Another powerful aspect of small kindness is that it requires no special resources. The waitress did not need wealth, authority, or education to make a difference. All she needed was awareness and intention. This makes kindness accessible to everyone. No matter our position in life, we all have daily opportunities to choose patience over irritation, respect over indifference, and compassion over convenience. Small kindness also has a compounding effect. Like drops of water wearing away stone, repeated gentle actions slowly change how people feel and how they see the world. The old woman may have arrived at the diner lonely, tired, or unnoticed by others. Over time, the waitress's consistent kindness likely became something she looked forward to. A reminder that goodness still existed in everyday places. That emotional impact cannot be measured in a single moment, but it grows stronger with repetition. Importantly, small kindness often goes unnoticed by the person giving it. The waitress probably did not think her actions mattered. She was just doing her job the way she believed it should be done. This is what makes such kindness pure. It is not performed for praise or reward. It is simply an expression of values. And because it is genuine, it carries more weight than performative or occasional generosity. In many cases, people underestimate how closely others observe consistency. While dramatic acts attract attention, steady behavior builds credibility. The old woman was watching, not in a suspicious way, but in a human way. She was learning who the waitress really was. Over time, the waitress proved that her kindness was not an act but a habit, and habits reveal who we truly are. Small, consistent kindness also shapes the person who practices it. Each day the waitress chose empathy. She reinforced her own character. Kindness is not just something we give, it is something we become. By practicing it daily, she strengthened her patience, her humility, and her sense of responsibility toward others. These internal changes are often invisible, but they are deeply transformative. Finally, this key point teaches us that we should never dismiss the value of ordinary moments. The most important tests of character rarely arrive with warning. They appear disguised as routine interactions with customers, strangers, elders, or people who seem unimportant. How we act in those moments, repeatedly and consistently, defines our integrity far more than how we act when recognition is guaranteed. Small kindness done once is nice. Small kindness done daily is powerful. One of the most powerful lessons in the story of the waitress and the old woman is the ability to see people for who they are, not for what they appear to be. In everyday life, we often judge others unconsciously, by their clothes, their age, their job, their wealth, or their social position. These surface-level details shape how we speak, how we listen, and how much respect we offer. The waitress, however, did something different. She looked beyond status and saw a human being. The old woman did not look important. She did not arrive in luxury cars or wear expensive jewelry. She sat quietly, ordered simply, and kept to herself. To many, she was easy to ignore. In public spaces, people like her often fade into the background, becoming part of the scenery rather than someone worth noticing. Yet the waitress chose to acknowledge her presence fully. She made eye contact, spoke gently, and treated her as someone who mattered. Seeing people rather than status requires awareness. It means pausing long enough to recognize that every person carries a story, a history, and a set of experiences that are not visible on the surface. The waitress did not know the woman's past, her achievements, or her wealth, but she understood something more important: age and simplicity do not reduce a person's value. By treating the old woman with dignity, she affirmed her humanity. This choice stands in contrast to how society often operates. Many people offer respect upward, to those with power, money, or influence, while neglecting or dismissing those they believe cannot benefit them. This creates a hierarchy of worth, where kindness becomes conditional. The waitress rejected this mindset. Her behavior did not change based on who the woman was or what she could offer. Her respect was consistent because it was rooted in principle, not advantage. Seeing people, not status, also requires humility. It demands that we do not place ourselves above others based on superficial differences. The waitress did not act superior, impatient, or dismissive. She did not rush the old woman or treat her as a burden. Instead, she met her at eye level, emotionally and socially. This equality created a space where the old woman felt comfortable, safe, and valued. Another important aspect of this key point is how easily status can be misleading. Wealth, influence, and importance are not always visible. Likewise, lack of these things does not mean lack of wisdom, experience, or significance. The old woman's true identity was hidden, but the waitress never tried to uncover it. She did not need proof of importance to offer respect. This shows emotional intelligence, the ability to value people without requiring justification. By seeing the person rather than the label, the waitress also avoided a common human error: selective kindness. Many people are kind only when it serves them or enhances their image. The waitress's kindness was inclusive. It did not depend on whether the customer was young or old, rich or poor, loud or quiet. This inclusivity is what made her actions meaningful and authentic. Seeing people also involves listening. The waitress sometimes took a moment to hear the old woman speak, even when she was busy. In a world where everyone rushes to talk, listening becomes an act of respect. Through listening, the waitress communicated, "You matter enough for my time." For someone who may have felt forgotten by society, this simple act carried deep emotional weight. This key point also highlights how dignity can be restored through everyday interactions. Older people, in particular, often experience invisibility. Their opinions are ignored, their pace is seen as inconvenient, and their presence is overlooked. The waitress pushed against this reality by treating the old woman with patience and warmth. In doing so, she restored a sense of dignity that the world often takes away. Seeing people rather than status is not always easy. It requires intentional effort, especially when we are tired, stressed, or distracted. But the waitress demonstrated that it is possible to practice this mindset even in routine, demanding work. Her ability to remain respectful day after day shows that empathy can become a habit, not just a reaction. Ultimately, this key point teaches us that every person deserves the same level of basic respect, regardless of what they appear to be worth. When we learn to see people instead of status, we create environments of trust, fairness, and humanity. The waitress did not see an old woman with no importance. She saw a customer, a person, a human being. And that choice shaped everything that followed. One of the most striking lessons in the story of the waitress and the old woman is the realization that our actions are rarely as private as we believe. Even in the most ordinary moments, someone may be observing, not to judge harshly, but to understand who we truly are. The waitress did not know she was being watched, evaluated, or remembered. She believed she was simply moving through another routine workday. Yet those routine moments became a quiet test of her character. Most people behave differently when they know they are being observed. When a supervisor is present, service improves. When cameras are on, manners increase. When recognition is expected, effort multiplies. But the waitress's kindness did not depend on visibility. Her behavior remained the same whether the diner was full or empty, whether the customer was important or invisible. That consistency is what made her actions meaningful. The idea that you never know who is watching does not only refer to powerful people or hidden observers. It also applies to children watching adults, employees watching leaders, strangers watching how we treat others, and even people who never speak but remember how they were made to feel. The old woman was watching not with suspicion, but with attention. She was noticing patterns, how the waitress spoke, how she responded under pressure, and whether her kindness faded over time. Observation over time reveals truth. A single act can be rehearsed, a repeated behavior cannot easily be faked. Day after day, the waitress unknowingly demonstrated patience, respect, and empathy. There was no dramatic moment, no test announced in advance. The test was simply life unfolding normally, and in that normalcy, her true character became visible. This key point also highlights an important reality. Reputation is often built quietly. People form opinions based not on what we say about ourselves, but on what we do when we think no one important is paying attention. The waitress did not promote herself. She did not seek praise. Yet her actions spoke louder than any introduction or resume ever could. In many ways, this story challenges the idea that integrity only matters in big moments. In truth, integrity is revealed in small, repeated decisions. Do we remain kind when we are tired? Do we remain respectful when there is no reward? Do we treat people well when they cannot benefit us? These are the moments others remember. These are the moments that define us. The presence of the bodyguards and lawyers later in the story serves as a dramatic contrast. It reminds us that people we underestimate may have influence, resources, or authority we never imagined. But more importantly, it shows that the old woman's evaluation of the waitress was not based on one impressive act. It was based on months of quiet observation. By the time she revealed her true status, her decision had already been made. This lesson extends beyond the story and into our daily lives. We often assume that ordinary actions disappear once the moment passes. In reality, they leave traces. The way we treat waiters, cleaners, receptionists, elders, and strangers is noticed, not just by them, but by others around us. Even when no one speaks up, impressions are formed. There is also a deeper psychological truth here. People remember how we make them feel. The old woman likely felt respected, safe, and valued in the presence of the waitress. Those feelings did not come from a single interaction, but from consistent treatment over time. That emotional memory became the basis for trust and appreciation. Understanding that someone may always be watching should not make us anxious or artificial. Instead, it should encourage authenticity. The goal is not to perform goodness, but to live it naturally. The waitress succeeded not because she tried to impress, but because she stayed true to her values regardless of the audience. This key point ultimately reminds us that character does not need a stage. It reveals itself in silence, in routine, and in repetition. Whether or not recognition ever comes, our actions are observed, remembered, and often rewarded in ways we never expect. One of the most meaningful lessons in this story is the idea that true opportunity is often created by character, not by ambition alone. Many people spend their lives chasing success, seeking better positions, higher income, or powerful connections, believing that opportunity comes only through strategy, visibility, or luck. The waitress, however, did none of these things. She did not network, promote herself, or attempt to impress anyone. Yet opportunity found her, quietly and unexpectedly, because of who she was. Character is the sum of our values in action. It is revealed through honesty, consistency, respect, and empathy, especially when there is no immediate benefit. The waitress's character was visible in how she treated the old woman every morning. She showed patience when it was easier to rush, kindness when it was easier to remain neutral, and respect when it was easier to ignore. These choices did not bring instant rewards, but they slowly built something far more powerful: trust. Trust is the foundation of opportunity. People are willing to help, recommend, reward, and invest in those they trust. The old woman trusted the waitress not because of her skills alone, but because of her integrity. Over time, the waitress proved that her behavior was not influenced by appearance, wealth, or advantage. That reliability made her stand out in a world where many people change their behavior depending on who they are dealing with. This key point also challenges the belief that opportunity always comes from external qualifications. The waitress may not have had formal education, high status, or influential connections, but she possessed something equally valuable: strong character. Employers, leaders, and decision-makers often say that skills can be taught, but character cannot. When opportunity finally appeared, it did not come because the waitress asked for it. It came because someone believed in her. Character also creates opportunity by shaping how others speak about us when we are not present. The old woman did not need to interview the waitress or ask for references. Her experience became the reference. Every kind interaction became evidence of reliability. In professional and personal life, this kind of reputation is priceless. Doors open more easily when our name is associated with integrity. Another important aspect of this lesson is that opportunity often arrives disguised. The waitress did not recognize the old woman as a source of change in her life. To her, she was simply a regular customer. Yet that very ordinariness was the test. Opportunity was not introduced with an announcement or warning. It grew silently, rooted in daily behavior. This teaches us that every interaction has potential, even when it seems insignificant. Character-driven opportunity also tends to be lasting. Success gained through shortcuts, manipulation, or superficial charm often fades quickly, but success built on integrity is more stable because it is supported by trust and respect. Whatever the old woman offered the waitress, whether help, security, or a life-changing reward, it was grounded in confidence that the waitress deserved it. That kind of opportunity does not create fear or guilt, it creates growth. This key point also reminds us that character attracts the right kind of opportunity. When we act with honesty and kindness, we attract people who value those qualities. The waitress did not attract attention from someone looking to exploit her. She attracted appreciation from someone who recognized her worth. This alignment matters because not every opportunity is worth accepting. Character helps filter opportunities that match our values. There is also a broader life lesson here. We cannot always control outcomes, but we can control how we behave. The waitress had no control over the old woman's identity or decision. What she controlled was her attitude, her tone, and her treatment of others. By focusing on what she could control, her character, she unknowingly positioned herself for a moment that would change her future. Ultimately, this key point teaches us that opportunity is not always something we chase. Sometimes, it is something we prepare for without realizing it. Every honest action, every kind response, and every moment of integrity becomes preparation. When the moment arrives, whether we expect it or not, character determines whether that opportunity passes by or stops and opens a door. The story of the waitress and the old woman is not meant to be admired from a distance. It is meant to be applied. Its true value lies in what it teaches us about our own daily behavior and the choices we make when no one is applauding. While most of us will never experience a moment as dramatic as bodyguards and lawyers walking into our workplace, we all face the same quiet tests of character every day. This lesson begins with self-reflection. The waitress did not see herself as doing anything extraordinary, yet her actions became extraordinary because they were consistent and sincere. This challenges us to examine how we treat people in our own routines. How do we speak to those who serve us? How do we respond to people who are slow, elderly, or struggling? How do we behave when there is nothing to gain? These small decisions reveal far more about us than our biggest achievements. Another important lesson is that kindness should not be selective. It is easy to be polite to people we admire or those who can benefit us. It is much harder to extend the same respect to those we believe are unimportant. The waitress treated the old woman well without knowing her background or value to society. In our own lives, we encounter people whose stories we do not know. Classmates, co-workers, neighbors, strangers. This story reminds us that everyone deserves dignity regardless of their status. The story also teaches us patience. The waitress did not rush the old woman or treat her as an inconvenience, even though service work is often stressful and exhausting. In modern life, impatience has become common. We are frustrated by delays, interruptions, and differences. Yet patience is one of the clearest expressions of respect. Choosing patience in everyday moments can transform relationships and environments, just as it did in that diner. This lesson extends to how we define success. Society often measures success by money, power, or recognition. The waitress likely did not feel successful while serving tables each day, but her character placed her on a path toward a form of success that was deeper and more meaningful. This challenges us to rethink our priorities. Are we focused only on outcomes, or are we also focused on who we are becoming? Another takeaway is responsibility. The waitress understood, consciously or not, that her role gave her influence over how others felt. Even small roles carry responsibility. A teacher influences students, a worker influences customers, a friend influences friends, and a stranger can influence a moment. The lesson here is that we should never underestimate the impact of our position, no matter how small it seems. This key point also encourages humility. The waitress did not assume superiority over the old woman. She did not measure her worth or judge her lifestyle. Humility allowed her to connect genuinely. In our own lives, humility helps us remain open, compassionate, and fair. It reminds us that circumstances can change at any time, and that worth is not determined by appearances. Finally, this lesson invites us to live with intention. Every interaction is an opportunity to choose kindness or indifference, respect or disregard. The waitress consistently chose the better option, even when it felt ordinary. In doing so, she built a life moment that carried lasting meaning. Our lives are made up of the same kinds of moments, quiet, repetitive, and seemingly unimportant, but together, they shape our character and our future. The story ultimately asks us not what we would do in a dramatic situation, but how we behave in ordinary ones. So the next time life feels ordinary, remember this story. Remember that greatness is rarely loud and impact is rarely immediate. It lives in the quiet choices we make when no one is watching, in the respect we show when no reward is promised, and in the kindness we offer to those who seem invisible. The waitress did not change her life in a single moment. She changed it one morning at a time, through patience, dignity, and character. And in doing so, she proved a simple truth. How we treat people in the smallest moments often determines the biggest outcomes. Let us leave here with that lesson in mind, choosing kindness not because it may return to us, but because it defines us.